Hey guys, David Vose here. Beautiful day. It is blue skies, fluffy clouds. It's probably going to rain later. It's kind of sprinkling every day. It's wonderful weather. Bugs are going away. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Well, yesterday we did a video, and it's the first in the series. This will be the second and probably the final video, because we're going to clear this all up today. But we are going to go on with this theme in different areas. There's a lot more we're going to talk about. But this is going to really help you to understand, because now in yesterday's video, I really played the devil's advocate. I gave you all the reason why maybe the Bible isn't true. Today, we're going to take a needle and we're going to get some thread and we're going to sew it back up with truth and with facts to put this together, so you'll understand that those arguments prove the Bible is the truth, and that we do have a divine father who is Adam, and we have a father Abraham, and we have the Lord Jesus Christ, the Son of Man, the son of Theo, and we're all children of El, children of Theos, joint heirs with Christ, and we're going to reign upon the earth for 1,000 years, and we are going to become immortal, get our crowns and our white robes, and it's going to be glorious. And we are approaching very fast the last few moments of this old world. They are literally sitting on the trigger right now. And the whole financial system's going to switch. They're going to start ramping things up, friends. So we need to understand these things for our faith to grow, so that we can stand firm and not be confused or hesitant. Because if we're confused and we don't know, if we have any excuse, our carnal nature is going to say, well, if there's no Jesus, then I'm just going to go die and eat worms, right? But if we can show with evidence the truth will set us free. And it will give us the strength to carry on through this coming trial that's coming upon the entire world. We need to learn this stuff. We need to understand it. We need to grow in our faith. And then we need to acquire wisdom and knowledge and then power, so we can demonstrate the power of the Holy Spirit to our friends and family and our neighbors, and snatch some out of the fire, because this old wicked world's coming to an end. Anyway, I'm going to get right into this. Now, let me show you something. So, the Goggle brothers say, according to Wikipedia, some scholars have argued that the Elephantine papyri indicate that the Torah had only recently been promulgated at the time. Then they're going to say something kind of contradictory here in a second. The Elephantine papyri are a collection of Aramaic documents that include official documents, letters, and literary pieces from the Jewish community. Literary pieces from the Jewish community on Elephantine Island in the Nile River. The documents are important for understanding Aramaic, the official language of the Persian Empire during this time, and are the largest known collection of Aramaic documents from before Christianity. The papyri also, that's a pretty big thing here, that the largest collection of Aramaic documents known. The papyri also refers to a Jewish temple on the island that existed in the 6th and the 5th century BCE, where sacrifices were offered. Again, friends, as I said, the truth is that the Judeans were Egyptians. They lived in Egypt. Abraham went to the land of Goshen, and that's the northern part of Egypt. And there, in the southern part of Egypt, they were brothers. And so then they unified the kingdom under Solomon. And he had the north and the south. And then therefore they would have this temple that we call Jerusalem, but that's near Cairo, the Great Pyramid. And so Josephus, as I've said many times, Josephus says in the book of the Wars of the Jews that the temple was rebuilt at Heliopolis. Now, this is a different temple further down by the Elephantine community, maybe further south. But what we find is that the Judeans had several temples in this Egyptian area. And of course, there are many temples in Egypt. But it says, now, right at this point, you're thinking, what are you talking about? Wait till you get to you'll see the proof for all of this. They had no idea about the Torah or Judaism as we know it. So it says they seem to have had no knowledge of a written Torah or the narratives described therein. No knowledge of a written Torah, but not only that, no knowledge of the words that were in the Torah or the ideas in the Torah. They didn't know anything about a Torah, but they called themselves Judeans. How they know they were Judeans there? How they know that there were temples there before them? Also important is the fact that the papyri documents the existence of a small Jewish temple at the Elephantine, which possessed altars for incense offerings and animal sacrifices as late as 411 BC. Did the Jews in Elephantine have any knowledge about Mosaic law? Questioning the Hellenistic date for the Hebrew Bible Elephantine. In what way does the Elephantine papyri challenge the narrative? This is big stuff, but you're not going to hear about it in your local Sunday school. Biblical criticism. What evidence shows that Moses wrote the Torah? So, in the world, you either study the Bible or you study Greek mythology. But us peasants don't know a lot about Greek mythology, but learned people who get PhDs and go to college university, they're taught the Greek mythological information. It seems like everybody's familiar with it. We all know about Zeus. There's a lot of pictures in our artwork. We have our Capitol building that looks like, maybe it looks like Greek, Athenia. We have a lot of customs, democracy, and stuff comes from this, from these ancient Greeks. The Athenian Greek seems to be some kind of reverenced thing. But so is the Egyptian, because we've always got the pyramid on the dollar bill. And so we seem to revere Egyptian, Greek, and for the peasants in the little buildings where all the peasants go to get their instructions every Sunday, they read the Bible, the more carnal part. The commandments, don't lie, don't steal. We've got to educate the peasants that they better not lie or steal or rise up against their masters. So they get the law. See? But the influential elites, they're not under the law. They learn some kind of wisdom in poetry. So the two main ones is Greek and Hebrew. And the Jewish is the law for the peasants. The Greek is for the upper class. You know, they always did this. There's always this holy language. But we don't speak it. Only the priests know that language. That was the Athenian Greek. That's basically the holy language. And if you understood, because it is a superior language, it's closer to the original meaning. So just as they did at the Tower of Babel, where they scattered the peoples and scattered and divided their languages so they couldn't reach deity and build a tower to the sky and reach the Lord, and the knowledge of good and evil, to become like deity. They scattered their knowledge, their language. One way they do it is by dividing them with 72 deities, 72 beliefs, confusion, races. And you got to get a passport to go from here to there. And each deity rules. So all these different groups have different religions, but it's all the same religion. They just don't know it. It's all written in a different language. They divide the language. Some of it's upside down, some's right side up, left to right, right to left. Somewhat's mixed matched, all backwards in some code or whatever. But they got to stick to the more original language. These Dulceers, they speak in some kind of Latin, which is the last, vestiges of this holy language. But it still has all the symbols. And if you look at scientists and stuff, they really speak Greek. It is our medicine, all the words and all the herbs and all the legislative things, all these words like democracy comes from the Greek. It's the holy language. The early Christians coined the term the holy textus receptus, the received holy text from the Greek in 280 BC by the 72 or the Sanhedrin. There was no more authority after Christ died when he took the keys away. And any Jewish Sanhedrin after that it had no authority. So that's why it's written in Greek for them. So they can, when they learn Greek, they can learn more. They can understand. It opens their mind. It's a tool. But the peasants are down here stuck in this lying pen of the scribe, the Judean scribe, Jeremiah 8:8. They've twisted it and made it so it's very difficult to understand. They've mistranslated it, and they've given each of us different languages, which is one of the reasons that it's mistranslated, because in our language, it doesn't really even translate. We don't have the words in English to translate that. So when did this Greek mythology get written down? When was it ever known that there were all these deities like Zeus and Aphrodite? Well, it was by Homer. Homer wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. He was a Greek poet who is credited as the author of the Iliad and the Odyssey, two epic poems that are foundational works of ancient Greek literature. Homer is considered one of the most revered and influential authors in history. We're going to find out that's not really even true. Some say he didn't exist. Now, hold on. Homer's Iliad centers on the quarrel between King Agamemnon and the warrior Achilles during the last year of the Trojan War. The Odyssey chronicles the 10-year journey of Odysseus, king of Ithaca, back to his home after the fall of Troy. The poems in the Homeric Greek are also known as the Epic Greek, a literary language. See, this is where we get in the New Testament Theo rather than Zeus, because this is their literary language, which shows a mixture of features of the Ionic and the Aeolic dialects from different centuries, the predominant influence in Eastern Ionic. Most researchers believe that the poems were originally transmitted orally. They say that because we don't have any record of these stories. We don't have any written record. When they say it was written, we don't have any records. So perhaps, like, some of it's a myth. He himself may be a myth. There were no written records. Maybe this was written in the days of Jesus, about the same time that the Bible was made. And remember, the Greeks are Jews. They're of the line of Zerah from Judah. They left in a boat from Egypt before the other Israelites left with Moses. And these are the Tuatha De Danans. And we've talked about all of that. So they are Judeans. And this is probably why, in order to get all the Judeans, we had to go to the Greeks. And when he says Jew first and then to the Greeks. So it was only transmitted orally. Despite being predominantly known for its tragic and serious themes, the Homeric poems also contain instances of comedy and laughter. So it's a play. It's not intended to be literal. Homer's epic poems shaped aspects of the ancient Greek culture and education, fostering ideals of heroism, glory, and honor. To Plato, Homer was simply the one who has taught Greece. The question of by whom, when, where, and under what circumstances the Iliad and the Odyssey were composed continues to be debated. They don't know. Scholars remain divided as to whether the two works are a product of a single author. If they don't know if it's a single author, they don't know who wrote them. It is thought that the poems were composed at some point around the late 8th or early 7th century BC. Some think that, but they don't give you any evidence for that. Many accounts of Homer's life circulated in classical antiquity. The most widespread account was that he was a blind bard from Ionia, a region of central coastal Anatolia in present-day Turkey. Modern scholars consider these accounts legendary. It's just a legend that he even existed. Today, only the Iliad and Odyssey are associated with the name Homer. In antiquity, a larger number of other works were sometimes attributed to him, including Homeric hymns, the Contest of Homer and Hesiod, several epigrams and Little Iliad, the Nostoi, the Thebaid, the Cypria, the Epigoni, and the comic mini-epic Batrachoma Yamaktia, the Frog-Mouse War. The Margites, the capture of Ochelia, and the Phoces. These claims are not considered authentic today and were by no means universally accepted in the ancient world. Now, let me go down here and show you this. In 1664, contradicting the widespread praise of Homer as the epitome of wisdom, Francois Hedelin Abbé Agbignac wrote a scathing attack on the Homeric poems, declaring that they were incoherent, immoral, tasteless, and without style, that Homer never existed, that the poems were hastily cobbled together by incompetent editors from unrelated oral songs. 50 years later, the English scholar Richard Bentley concluded that the Homer did not exist, but that he was an obscure prehistoric oral poet whose compositions bear little relation to the Iliad and the Odyssey, as they have been passed down. According to Bentley, Homer wrote a sequel of songs and rhapsodies to be sung by himself for small earnings and good cheer at festivals and other days of merriment. The Iliad he wrote for men, the Odyssey for the other sex, I guess women. Wouldn't that be the other sex? These loose songs were not collected together in the form of an epic poem until Pisistratus' time, about 500 years later. Well, 500 years later puts you about in the 2nd century, about the same time that the Bible was supposedly written in 280 BC. Frederick August Wolff's Prolegomena ad Homerum, published in 1795, argued that much of the material later incorporated into the Iliad and the Odyssey was originally composed in the 10th century BC in the form of short, separate oral songs, which passed through oral traditions for roughly 400 years before being assembled into a phototypical version of the Iliad and the Odyssey in the 6th century BC by literate authors. After being written down, Wolff maintained that the two poems were extensively edited, modernized, and eventually shaped into their present state as artistic unities. Wolff and the Annalist school, which led the field in the 19th century, sought to recover the original authentic poems, which were thought to be concealed by later excrescences. Within the Analysis school were two camps: proponents of the lay theory, which held that the Iliad and the Odyssey were put together from a large number of short independent songs, and the proponents of the nucleus theory, which held that Homer had originally composed shorter versions of the Iliad and the Odyssey, which later poets expanded and revised. A small group of scholars opposed the analysts dubbed Unitarians, saw the later editions as superior, the work of a single inspired poet. By around 1830, the central preoccupations of Homeric scholars, dealing with whether or not Homer actually existed, there you go. There is the history of the world. All that we know, whether from the Greek or the Hebrew, was all done relatively late. And it's very possible then, since we know that the Bible was written in 280 BC by the Sanhedrin or the 72, that that group of individuals was Judean individuals. Many of them were priests, and we can show you that. They always found their way to very high offices. Josephus was he had the name Flavius because he was an adopted member of the royal family. And so they used them as, just like Joseph, when he went down to Egypt, became Pharaoh. The reason they used the Judeans is because they were of royal blood. The entire Judean population was of this royal blood, and they were, many of them, liberals. And as we've said, there was no such thing as the Torah ever written until 280. So they didn't believe in all that. They were priests. Philo, Pliny, and these individuals were Judeans. They were the scribes. They were the lawyers, just as they are today. And so the temple at Alexandria was what remained of the temple at Heliopolis in the Elephantine. It was all Judean. It was all from the original teachings of Joseph that went to Heliopolis and married Asenath. And so they're all Judeans. They're all Israelites. Some Israelites went here, some went there. One tribe went to Greece and made Troy. And we have documented all of this. This is completely well documented, so that there's no ambiguity here. We know that the Greeks were a tribe of Israel. And we know that the royal bloodlines down to the Caesars through Alexander the Great goes back to Hercules, which we've said is Samson. The stories are identical. So they trace themselves to a real person, or else they wouldn't be alive. It's their blood. And they believe in this Hercules, this powerful person. Did Hercules have these great powers? I don't know. Did Adam live 930 years? That's quite a big power. Did Noah live 950 years? Well, if they lived that long, they may have had some technology too. But we don't know all the details. We only know that these are individuals, real individuals. The Greeks were looking back to their forefathers. Their forefather, Zeus, was Abraham. It is a real story, friends. And people like Ovid and Virgil and Homer and Hesiod, they were priests. And in which religion were they priests? Where the same religion beliefs as Pythagoras and Aristotle and Plato, who learned the mysteries from the mystery school, which is one school of the mysteries that goes back to the Egyptian priesthood, or the priesthood of Abraham. So they knew there were different languages, and they had these mysteries in every country. The school of the prophets is the mystery schools, and the prophets are all over the world. And as we said, Ezekiel is Buddha, and Daniel is Zoroaster. And so today we have these languages that all say the same thing, but it's a different language. So we say, oh, it's a different story. These are different peoples. And it's not true. It's all the same, but they've divided it. There is a division in the kingdom. The 10 tribes are the northern tribes, and the Judeans are the southern tribes. And the southern tribes of the Judeans is the lower part of the night and the carnal commandments. The Bethel, or the house of El, is the higher priesthood, the Canaanite. Father Molech, Abimelech, Melech Zadok, the righteous Moloch. And it's the priesthood that is Abimelech that made the covenant with Abraham. Abimelech was the husband of Sarah. I mean, she had Abraham too, but she also had Abimelech in this Ariel's Gamos that produced Isaac, the child of promise. Just as Joshua had relations with Rahab, the high priestess at Jericho, and produced the lineal descendants of the Judeans down to King David. And David married Bathsheba, and Judah married Tammuz the Canaanite, and this goes on, because it is a wedding of the north and the south. And so the middle is Cairo. Above that is Goshen, but Goshen actually goes up all the way up to Lebanon. That is the one northern area. And then the southern area goes down not just to the southern part of Egypt, but all the way to, Ethiopia, which was considered all of Africa. So it really is the entire world split up north and south. And sometimes it's in a wheel, the hub being Cairo, and the 12 tribes being scattered around the wheel, or the Gilgal, which means the wheel. It really just means the circuit, which is the Greek word Galilee. And Jesus preached in Galilee, or on the circuit of the wheel around the world, which is the same illustration that our language has, our math, 360 degrees, and everything else in the universe is based on these principles. They were spiritual principles handed down by Enoch and the Great Pyramid. It's all true. And when it got down to Israel being scattered, each of the nations took their ancient truths and wrote them in such a way that it would hide it from the wise and reveal it to babes who's willing to be humble and pray. Those who sought love and truth and who wanted to know and would read the scriptures and pray would learn great, wonderful, inspiring truth. Because the holy word, the hieroglyph, which is the holy writing, is written in the Great Pyramid. And from there, and then, it describes the message in the stars. So it's written in the stars, it's written in the pyramid. And from there, it was written into each of these tribes as they were scattered around by priests such as Ovid, who was a priest. And Homer was a priest. Berosus was a priest. Herodotus was a priest. Pliny, Philo, all of them were priests. And they were commissioned to write all the truth down in a parable to reveal it to the babes. The hidden esoteric wisdom is there. And to this day, they cannot stop you from attaining enlightenment and becoming really free. For those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, they will know the mystery that is written therein. Hold on. We got one more problem. Yesterday, we played the devil's advocate and we gave both sides of the story. Today, we're going to try and answer this question. Maybe we'll get it in this particular video and we'll have it all done in 2 videos. We can move on to some very important things that we need to get to. But we need to establish that the Bible is the true word. Now, we did say that, according to the Bible itself, it is the true word or factual history, because the book of Hebrews tells us that Abraham and David and Gideon and Rahab and all these individuals were people, real people, a cloud of witnesses, a martyrs that we're supposed to look to and have inspiration to be like them. They were that we without them cannot be saved, that they were real people. And I think the Apostle Paul and all of these individuals talk about Abraham as though he was a real person. He got a covenant and we're under the covenant. Or he got a promise and we're going to get and we couldn't have a promise that wasn't given to Abraham originally. So we've got that. The Bible says of its own self, it is true. But what about the contradiction, apparently, then, that we read the other day in Titus, where the Apostle Paul says that the Jewish information is a myth. Isn't a myth something that's not true? Not really true, right? Well, look at what the word myth means in the dictionary. It's, number one, a traditional story, especially one concerning the early history of a people or explaining some natural or social phenomenon, and typically involving supernatural beings or events. So, yes, it has supernatural, and it has some natural or social phenomenons, and it's also history. Well, history's got to be what your people did, who your ancestors were. So it's about our ancestors, real people, but we're going to have some parables mixed in or some social phenomenon to accentuate things and, as we said, hide it from the wise but reveal it to the babes. So it's a deeper work than just the history. It's history that tells a deeper esoteric story. So similar traditional stories or legends collectively, the heroes of Greek myth. So it's traditional oral stories that, you're telling a story about someone and you said, oh, John Henry had a hammer, right? And he could lay track for 1,000 miles by himself. Well, maybe he couldn't do that much. But the story is sort of exaggerating some aspects. So Atlas could hold up the world, and Hercules was a strong man, and all these individuals. Well, that's what our Bible does. It doesn't mean it's not true. Samson is exaggerated, his strength. And did the Red Sea part, or is that symbolic of something? Well, if it's symbolic of something, does that mean that Moses didn't exist? No. Moses is written by the Egyptian historian Vose. In fact, Moses is Ramoses, Raw Moses. He's in their genealogy, as is Joseph, Ammon-Hoseph. It's factual, but it is not absolutely literal. The characters are exaggerated, but they're real people. So we don't know if Adam lived 1,000 years or 100,000 years, but the only way you can know anything actual is that there was a person who is a father to the rest of all of us. That's got to be real because we're all here. We had a father. And history reveres these individuals. Now notice they have other definitions, like in 2, a widely held but false belief or idea. Well, that's number 2 because modern individuals believe that myth is false, and so it's come to mean that in modern times, but the original meaning wasn't that. Let me show you that. Let's go to what the original Greek word meant that's in our Bibles and not worry about what it means to us today. But it says the word mythology, which is that word logic, right? Interpretation of myths, borrowed from the compound of the Greek words mythos, or story, and logos, or speech, or logic. So it's this logical story. In itself tells a story of ancient times, as myths were once passed from person to person only through the spoken word. So it is the oral traditions is accurately and maybe glamorized, it may be exaggerated, but it's the actual story of events. However, there is the literal story that we have in the Bible that was preserved with their names, and they're actually people and their languages and their families and their tribes that went all over the world. So that is the literal history. But as it's come down to us in the Greek, it is a exaggerated parable, but it is about the same deities. Anyway, oh boy, I think we might just end this early today. We just got through that with flying colors, and I think we explained pretty well what we're talking about here. We can sigh a deep breath of relief. Our scriptures are true. We have a Father in heaven who is Adam, and he is the one who is the Ancient of Days. And Jesus is the son of Adam, the son of man. And while you may have a few questions as you get used to this new understanding, you begin to realize right away that this is really good news. It's happy. It's awesome. It clears everything up. The story is that man is the heir of Jesus' Father. We're the heir of this entire kingdom. And Jesus was a real person who came in a long line of great men back through Abraham and to Noah and Adam. And we are their literal offspring. The book of Acts tells us that we are the offspring of God. We are the offspring of Theo. So that is literally true. And they really love us, and they really had this long life and this great wisdom. And there is a grand plan that's being played out. Everything's going to be all right. We're going to do some more videos coming up that are going to blow your mind to kingdom come. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one. Lord will bless you.